Hello. Today we'll discuss about the ceasefire between USA and Iran. A ceasefire can stop the shooting, but it does not automatically solve the conflict. The agreement between America and Iran looks important because it may reopen the Strait of Hormuz and reduce the immediate pressure on the oil markets. That is a big relief, especially for the countries that depends on energy shipments from the Persian Gulf. But the deeper problems that caused the war are still there. Think of it like a pressure cooker. If the pressure becomes too high, you open the valve to stop it from exploding. That helps in the short term, but if the heat is still on, the pressure can build again. The MOU is that pressure valve. It may calm the region for now, but it does not yet solve Iran's nuclear program, its missile capability, its support for regional militias, or the economic crisis inside the Iran. The Economist's view is that it is not a final peace deal. It is a deal to keep talking. CSIS makes a similar point. Both America and Iran will try to claim victory, but both have also lost something. America gets relief in the Straits of Hormuz, but it is negotiating with a regime is recently fought. Iran survives the war, but its economy and military have been badly damaged. So the key idea is the agreement matters, but it should not be confused with a permanent settlement. The MoU appears to do three main things. First, it aims to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. This is the immediate economic goal. The closure of Hormuz created stress in the global energy markets because so much oil and gas moved through that narrow waterway. Reopening it gives relief to oil exporters, energy importers, shipping companies, and consumers. Second, it creates a 60-day window for nuclear negotiations. This is the real heart of the deal. America wants limits on Iran's nuclear program, especially its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. Iran wants sanctions relief and access to frozen assets. These are not easy issues. A final nuclear agreement usually takes months or years, not just 60 days. For example, the 2015 Iran nuclear deal took years of negotiation. It involved technical limits, inspections, sanctions relief, international monitoring, and political approval from multiple sides. So when this MoU gives only 60 days for talks, it is very ambitious. Third, the deal may offer Iran some limited sanctions relief. That could include oil export waivers or access to frozen money. But this is politically sensitive in Washington because critics will argue that Iran is being rewarded without giving up enough. So the MoU is not the final answer. It is more like a bridge. It creates a path from war to negotiation, but whether that bridge holds depends on what will happen next. The Strait of Hormuz matters because it is one of the world's most important energy choke points. A choke point is a narrow route through which a large number of trade passes. If that route is blocked, the impact is not local, it becomes global. The US Energy Information Administration says about one-fifth of the global LNG trade passed through Hormuz in 2024. Oil shipment also depend heavily on this route. That is why news of deal pushed oil prices lower. It is currently $80 per barrel. Markets reacted because traders expected supply pressure to ease. If the tankers can move again, energy buyers feel less panic and prices can cool. For example, imagine a highway with only one major bridge connecting a factory zone to the rest of the country. If that bridge is closed, trucks piles up, deliveries stop, and prices rise. Hormuz works in a similar way for energy. It is not just a regional waterway, it is part of the world's energy highway. CSIS also notes that Gulf countries like Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait, and Qatar are especially exposed because they rely heavily on the Strait of Hormuz for exports. For them, reopening Hormuz is not just a market story, it is their economic survival issue. So the deal gives immediate relief because it reduces the risk of energy shock, but again, the relief depends on whether the ceasefire holds. The nuclear issue is the main reason this conflict cannot be solved by a simple ceasefire. Iran has a large stockpile of enriched uranium, including material enriched close to weapon grade level. America's biggest concern is what happens to the stockpile. Iran says its nuclear program is peaceful, but the US, Israel, and many Western governments fear that Iran could move closer to building a nuclear weapon. There are three broad options being discussed. One option is dilution. This means Iran would reduce the enrichment level of the uranium so it becomes less useful for a weapon. Another option is export. That means the uranium could be sent to a third country where Iran cannot easily use it. The third option is strict verification, where the International Atomic Energy Agency monitors Iran facilities and confirms whether Iran is following the agreement or not. The example here is very practical. If someone says, "Trust me, I have locked the dangerous material away," that may not be enough. The other side will want inspection, cameras, record, and independent verification. In nuclear diplomacy, trust is not the system, verification is the system. That is why the IAEA's role is so important. Without credible inspections, America and Israel may believe Iran is only buying time. And if Iran feels inspections are too intrusive, it may refuse to cooperate. So the ceasefire can stop the war temporarily, but only a serious nuclear agreement can address the core dispute. The deal does not create a clear winner. America can claim success because the Strait of Hormuz may reopen and the oil market pressure may ease. That matters politically because high oil prices can hurt the consumers and create inflation pressure. But America also faces criticism because it is now negotiating with Iran after a month of war. Some US politicians may argue that the deal gives Iran too much without solving the nuclear issue. Iran can also claim victory because the regime survived. It fought America and Israel and was not toppled. That is important for Tehran's internal propaganda. But the reality for ordinary Iranians may be very different. The economy is damaged, inflation is severe, industries have been hit, and the people are exhausted after repeated conflict. The Gulf states gain from reopening Hormuz. For them, the deal reduces immediate economic danger, but they still face a long-term threat of Iranian missiles, drones, and regional pressure. Israel may be the biggest strategic loser. Israel has long argued that Iran's nuclear program, missile arsenal, and support for the groups like Hezbollah must all be addressed together. But this MOU appears to focus mainly on Hormuz and nuclear talks. It does not fully solve missiles or Iran backs militias. So the best way to understand this issue is through a scorecard. Everyone gets something, but nobody gets everything. That is why the deal is fragile. The biggest danger to this deal may not be Hormuz. It may be Lebanon. Iran says the agreement should include an end to fighting between Israel and Hezbollah, but Israel may not accept the same interpretation. If Israel continues its operation in southern Lebanon, Iran or Hezbollah could argue that the deal is being violated. That could restart the escalation. This is a common problem in ceasefire agreements. The main text may sound broad, but each side reads it differently. One side says the deal covers all fronts. The other side says no, it only covers certain operations. That gap can become dangerous. For example, if Hezbollah fires rockets and says it is responding to Israeli activity in Lebanon, Israel may respond militarily. Iran may then say Israel broke the agreement. America may blame Hezbollah. Very quickly, a local clash can become a regional crisis again. CSIS also highlights that Iran's missile program and support for proxies are not fully addressed by the deal. That matters because Iran's power in the region does not come only from its nuclear program. It also comes from the network of allied groups and militias across Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. So the message is a deal with Iran is not only about Iran. It must also survive the actions of Israel, Hezbollah, the Gulf state, and the other regional actors. The final test is what happens after the first 60 days. If the two sides use the period seriously, the MOU could become the first step toward a broader agreement. That would mean reopening the shipment, creating verified nuclear limits, stabilizing Lebanon, and linking sanctions relief to clear Iranian actions. But if the talks fail, the ceasefire could become only a pause before another round of fighting. America may decide that Iran is delaying. Iran may decide that sanctions relief is too limited. Israel may decide that its security concerns are being ignored. Any one of these could bring the crisis back. A good example is loan restructuring. If a borrower and lender agree to pause the payment for 60 days, that gives the breathing room. But if they do not agree on the actual repayment plan, the problem returns after 60 days, sometimes worse than before. This MOU works in the same way. It creates a breathing room, not a full solution. The Economist's warning is that agreement does not resolve the issue that brought America and Iran to a war. CSIS also adds that the Lebanon front, nuclear talks, and sanctions relief would all become points of failure. So the confusion is clear. This deal should be welcomed because it reduces immediate danger, but it should not be oversold. It is a pressure valve, not a settlement. The real question is whether America, Iran, and the region can turn a temporary pause into a durable peace. Thank you.